Welcome to the College Game Day Podcast. I am your fill-in host, Pete Thamel. Reese Davis is amid a long day in Nashville with the SEC tournament wrapping up in the bracket. So I am, with much worse hair, I'll be quick to point out, attempting to guide us through one of my favorite nights of the year, Selection Sunday. Lucky to have with us Jeff Borzello, our college basketball expert, and Bill Connelly, our expert in everything, who numerically quantifies different arguments. We're going to do a little macro bracket talk before Chalk Borzello guides us through the rest of the bracket. I'm watching the bracket on a plane flying back from Nashville today, and all these teams keep getting in, and I was just like, well, who's not going to get in? And it didn't even dawn on me that West Virginia wouldn't get in until the end. Like, it just was like so surprising because, as I was told today, Bracket Matrix had them in 111 out of 111 brackets. Yeah. And I believe they were a low 10 seed in there. So to me, in the years I've done this, one of the most surprising snubs. And to counter that, we obviously have North Carolina making the field with a 1-12 quad one record and an uninspiring team that, quite frankly, I was really sick of watching. So as much as the numerics are offensive to North Carolina, they've been offensive on the court for so long. Now, they did play well last couple weeks of the season, so we'll give them that, and had a little spirited burst in the ACC tournament against Duke. Let it start with you, Jeff. North Carolina over West Virginia. Why?
I don't know. To be honest, I mean, to me, West Virginia, their resume wasn't overwhelming, but I thought it was sort of do they make it to the first, do they get in the first four, or are they getting a bye? But I did not think of them missing the tournament as a realistic option. And, you could say, oh, some of their biggest wins came with Tucker DeVries, who's no longer playing. But you take even their two best wins out, they still have better wins than Carolina does. And to me, the bigger issue, so Carolina 1-12 in quad one games. They beat one tournament team. It was before Christmas. It was against UCLA. Their predicted metrics are great, but they have a quad three loss and one quad one win. Texas has a terrible non-conference strength of schedule, 7 quad one wins. I don't see how you can there's just no consistency with those two getting in. I think you could say, hey, we're going to put an emphasis on quad one wins. It's Texas has shown they can beat good teams. They get in. Well, how do you justify Carolina? Or you could say, hey, Carolina has played better. They have really good predictive metrics. We are adding metrics to the team sheets for this very reason. Let's put them in. They played a really good schedule. They didn't win those games. So they played a tough schedule. And like I said, their metrics are good. They can get in. I don't see how you can put both in. I think the committee, it's just sort of a mixed message. Is it, stack up as many losses as you want, beat some of them and you get in? Or is it play a really tough schedule? It doesn't matter if you win those games, you're getting in too. It feels a little inconsistent. And to me, that's kind of the biggest issue in that, there's no going into next year. I don't think programs will know sort of what the best way to make the tournament is.
So for all the twisted logic, Bill, I'm going to tee up here in a second. I thought the Tucker DeVries excuse that the committee gave was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. He hasn't played since December 6th. Like they built their entire resume without him. So the talk of his injury, they played the entire conference schedule without him. They did have 2 good wins with him, but they have a full body of work, a preponderance body of work without him. So I was like, they even considered that? Like, they even talked about it? It was, to me, if he had gotten hurt, in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament, it's a real conversation. But their full resume was essentially built with him. Bill, what stood out to you about that decision?
Yeah, I mean, I hate going down the road of individual players. How much did they make a difference overall? That's just such a hard conversation to have no matter what. But yeah, I mean, they were basically, this isn't a new thing. They were 10-11, I guess, if you include the Big 12 tournament, 10-11 against Big 12 teams, which wasn't amazing. I'd be more worked up about this had there been an incredibly deserving, mid-major or something that got left out. We saw where, in the overall seedings, where North Carolina was sandwiched between VCU and UC San Diego. Like, if either of those lose in the last couple of days, they're gone. And that I would have been super fired up about that. I don't love West Virginia, but no, I mean, you're exactly right. They're 1-12. They got 13 opportunities to prove themselves as a tournament team. They won one of those games. UC San Diego got two of those games, or three of those games, sorry, and won two of them. So it was really confusing, but my first reaction was actually exactly what Jeff said. North Carolina and Texas getting in with the exact opposite strengths and weaknesses on their resume. It doesn't tell you a story, and I don't know what to make of it at all.
There used to be all these old stories of lore about the old NIT when it was run out of New York, like basically out of Manhattan College, of like backroom deals being cut to get teams in. And I am certainly not intimating anything untoward happened, but boy, with Bubba Cunningham as the chair of this committee, it does not give good optics towards how this could have happened. And they were very quick when Seth Davis asked the question on CBS, and then Reese asked the question on ESPN show to Bubba and Keith Gill. They were very quick to steer it away from Bubba. Like there was clearly, I don't know this, but there clearly seemed to be a let's not grill Bubba about his role in this. Now he was not in the room technically, but you can't ignore the human dynamics of those guys spending as much time as they do together and going out to dinner and doing all those things. Like it's just it's impossible. It's impossible to ignore and not at least let the mind wander there.
By the way, you take out the 2 wins that came with DeVries, West Virginia still has 3 more quad 1 wins than Carolina. So it's just it's a bad excuse, and it doesn't even make sense as a reason to keep them out.
Let's anything else, I guess, Jeff, before we go, stand out about this bracket? Was there a big misseed that you felt like? Was there a trend that emerged a little bit? Was there anything? I guess we should probably talk about 14 SEC teams making it, right? Like that wasn't fait accompli until we got here today. Anything else stand out from the macro?
I think SEC getting 14 is big. I do think the 2 kind of seedings that surprised most people was Memphis and Louisville. Mm-hmm. Louisville 18-2 in the ACC, went to the title game, got dropped down to an 8 seed, and they have to play in Lexington, which is a benefit for them probably, but that's probably 2 or 3 seed lines lower than most expected. Memphis, most people thought, given their predictive metrics, which are, I believe, the worst on average in the field among at-large teams or at-large top 8 seeds, but they get a 5 seed. And the most of it is because of what they did in the non-conference. And I actually commend the committee for doing what they did with Memphis. They challenged themselves in the non-league. They racked up really good wins over really good teams. The AAC was not great, and that dragged them down a little bit. But I giving them the benefit of the doubt for really scheduling tough and winning really tough games, a lot of them away from home in the non-conference, got them probably 3 seed lines higher than most people predicted. I think they were an 8 in the bracket matrix. So getting a 5 really caught people off guard.
Anything jump out at you, Bill?
No, I mean, Memphis was just from a predictive metric standpoint, they are obviously kind of the weakest of any of the top 5, 6 seeds. And we don't necessarily know everything. I mean, it does say something to not lose to bad teams. And they certainly, whether the AAC was shaky or not, they plowed their way through, won 19 out of 21 in conference play after beating Memphis late in non-conference. So they've done everything they were asked to do in 2025, you could say, aside from that Wichita State loss, I guess. But it's fine. It's like I expected them a little bit lower, but I get it. And like you said, having all those tough games, even some you didn't think were tough, like starting with Missouri, didn't know that was a top 20 game at the time, but they did. They beat plenty of power conference major teams right at the start and kind of rode it out from there.
My last macro observation, we'll dive into the South region with Auburn here, was the game that popped up and maybe kind of go woof the most was Michigan. Boy, they got a tough like combination of jabs. Yeah. They got the 5 seed, which, I mean, I was watching the Big Ten tournament game today, and Ian Eagle was saying this could lift him to a 3 with the win. So a little bit lower. I think it continues the trend of not rewarding teams that play into Sunday and win. We've seen that for years, and that obviously was the case here. And then they get sent to Denver on altitude on short rest against probably the saltiest 12 seed. So if you're Dusty, that's like a bad combination of like jab. Hey, nice Big Ten tournament win. Here's like 3 concurring things that are all of a sudden headwinds to you making a run. Now they did have a late slide, and that obviously And league play affected that, but that stood out to me just as just one of those things that the confluence of events that kind of jumped out. All right, let's go to the South, gentlemen. And we, of course, did not plan how we were going to break these down, so I'm just going to make up the rules as we go along. Any argument with Auburn as the number one overall?
No, I mean, I think they had a pretty historically strong resume, just in terms of quad one and two. They were fantastic.
Didn't have that either. Is this a region of chaos, or is it your chalk, Jeff?
I do have all chalk throughout the bracket, but this would probably be my least chalky. I have a 12 seed in the Sweet 16. UC San Diego.
Oh, so you got the Tritons, huh?
Yes, I do. Nation's longest winning streak. I don't know if the matchups are great from Michigan starts 2 7-footers. UC San Diego, not a ton of height. Texas A&M, elite offensive rebounding team. But they're playing really well. They're really good at both ends of the floor. They really guard. They share the ball. They make shots. And again, they're coming into the tournament with 15 straight wins, a ton of momentum. And if I have to go non-chalky somewhere, I'm going with them as my 12 seed.
All right, Bill, what jumps out to you here?
Well, I mean, the number one thing is defense. This region has, I was looking at, the Ken Palm rankings as always. They've got the number 5, 7, 9, 12, 13, 14, 19, 21, 25, 28, and 30 defenses in this region. So, points like just, go lean under here throughout, I guess. But no, I've completely fallen in love with the Tritons, the entire story, the D2, keeping your coach, all these things. And they're really, really fun to watch. They just know what they're doing. They're not very big. And you're right. That might be an issue, especially in the first round. But I do kind of, overall, I fear chalk as a whole with all four of these regions. But I think 12, 11, and 10 have a pretty good opportunity here to at least make the second round. And surely one of them would then make the Sweet 16.
As the resident ankle sprain reporter here, I should note that a big injury did emerge out of here today. We shouldn't make light of it. I'm making light of myself. Iowa State star Keyshawn Gilbert is been ruled out for the NCAA tournament. His career is over. He has been dealing with a nagging groin situation throughout really like the later half of conference play. He played in the first Big 12 tournament game against Cincinnati. He did not play against BYU. And he will be out. So that's a big blow to Iowa State. He leads them in minutes. He leads them in assists. He's their second leading scorer. Does this just make it difficult, Jeff, to have some belief in the Cyclones long term here? Tamin Lipsey is back, by the way. He had missed the Big 12 tournament loss. Lipsey is back, which is some good news. But how do you think this impacts Iowa State, Jeff?
I mean, about a month ago, right before Gilbert got hurt, or maybe 6 weeks ago, I thought Iowa State was a legitimate national title contender. I mean, they were playing their typically stingy defense with a much improved offense from past years, and they had not lost a single game since Auburn in Maui at full strength. And then Gilbert gets hurt, and the wheels just kind of fell off from there. The defense isn't as good as it was, and with a kind of a banged up Lipsey, no Gilbert, it puts a lot of pressure on Curtis Jones, the best sixth man in the country. Now he's starting and needs to carry the offense. It takes a lot away from them, and they're not playing their best basketball right now. Even, with a banged up Gilbert and Lipsey, I think I would have them beating Michigan State. I just don't know if they have the firepower to beat, to get to the Elite Eight at this point. Gilbert's he was a legitimate first team All-American at the midway point of the season, and it's a huge loss for them.
I think they'll beat Lipscomb, right? I don't see that as anything. But from there, boy, does it get tricky, and boy, does it open things up for Ole Miss a little bit too, right?
Or Carolina.
Or what?
Or Carolina.
Oh God! Don't make me watch them more than like some Tuesday on True TV. I've had my fill of Elliot Cadeau, and I have heard my friend and colleague Seth Greenberg talk about roster construction more than I can handle. So it was poorly constructed. It didn't work. UNC was almost ready to move on. You know what I mean? Like just in terms of, hey, we hired this new GM. They already have their like new narrative for 25-26 spin going, and credit them for rallying late to eke in. But I just I don't know. That doesn't leave it. Just the whole situation doesn't leave a great taste in my mouth. Jeff, you had pointed out the spicy matchup in Marquette, New Mexico. Do you want to walk us through why that's going to be a fun one?
Yeah, Marquette, the point guard matchup. Marquette's Cam Jones and New Mexico's Donovan Dent, two of the 3 or 4 best point guards in the country. Dent, the best player in the Mountain West all season. Cam Jones, probably the best guard in the country until probably the last 6 or 7 games of the season. Both teams can win, can beat the 2 seed. I mean, I think both teams have proven over the course of the season they can beat good teams. And I think whoever wins that head-to-head matchup, Cam Jones and Donovan Dent, it's to me, it's really a chance for Dent to have a huge game on the national stage. He has struggled in big games in previous years, in past tournaments, conference tournaments, NCAA tournaments. He hasn't been at his best. This going against, again, an All-American guard in Cam Jones, if he can play the way he's been playing the last 2-3 months of the season, New Mexico can win that game. And I do think they could give Michigan State a run in round 2.
Should Villanova fans be watching that game? Because Shaka Smart is the aspirational candidate there, and Richard Pitino could be the Wildcats' next coach. I kid. Bill, can Yale do it again?
Yes. They passed the test of, are they pretty good? And that's kind of the step one here. They absolutely are. They can make a ton of 3-pointers, which is absolutely not the kind of underdog you want to play. Obviously, defense isn't, going to be exactly high-level power conference stuff, but an underdog that knows they can win these types of games and make a lot of 3-pointers is always going to be a major, major challenge. And A&M's good. They're very, very battle tested and a very battle tested coach. But you don't always go, once the 3-pointers go up, you can't really control whether they go in or not, and that can be a pretty big wild card.
Jeff, you had a good tweet today about James Jones's tournament history. I was there in Providence when they beat Baylor back when Scott Drew couldn't win the big one and was a tortured tournament coach. In my mind, that was 2017, but it could have been a different year than that. And then last year they beat Auburn. My favorite game day snark of the year in basketball was the Alabama fan that just held up a Yale banner for like the entire show. Touche, young man, touche. Why do you think James Jones hasn't gotten a look from a big program? He's a really intriguing candidate. He's a really compelling guy. I mean, he's been there for so long. We've all been around him and gotten to know him over the years. What do you think it is that has kind of kept him there?
Well, certainly not his resume. I mean, his resume is as good as any mid-major in the country. I think he's if you're a Power 5 AD and you're trying to start fresh, he is 61 years old. And if you want to try to get your long-term home run higher, you're probably going to look younger than him. I think to me that's probably the only reason he's still there. I think at this point he's probably comfortable there, and obviously he's winning at an incredibly high level. Like I said in the tweet you mentioned, he's been to either the tournament or won the Ivy League regular season title in each of the last 6 seasons. You mentioned he's won 2 tournament games already. So he's had an incredible amount of success. I just think that, most Power 5 ADs, I think they're just looking for probably a younger face to lead their program.
Speaking of spicy, Louisville and Lexington to me is kind of spicy, right? And you could guess there were probably a few curse words in the Auburn basketball office when they saw that they may have to play what essentially would be a road game against Louisville there. Now, I'm certainly not like just counting Creighton as chalk, right? I mean, that will be a very good basketball game, and Creighton could certainly win. And by the way, Creighton's not no cakewalk in a second round game either for Auburn. They're the rare team that actually has the size that could give Auburn some trouble. Bill, what stands out to you about Les Affaires Lexington?
Are we just talking Louisville, Creighton, or the entire force in there? No, I think Creighton. I always look at 3-point shooting first because I wrote enough basketball recaps where it just basically came down to who made the threes. They don't do that very well, and they don't stop the other team from doing very well. But they also don't lean on it. They've got size. They've got the interior game quite a bit. They just shoot better than you overall, whether it's beyond the arc or in front of it, and that's going to be pretty interesting. It feels like they're a unique matchup at the very least. But I really do like the teams that just haven't really lost much in a really long time, and Louisville getting such a low seed. I realize the ACC's down. I know how it happened, but Louisville getting such a low seed after rolling through the ACC that much is just not really computing very well, and I immediately think they have an advantage.
The team in this bracket we haven't talked a lot about is Tom Izzo's Michigan State Spartans. They sit there at the 2. I don't think Bruce Pearl was probably particularly thrilled to see Michigan State as the 2 in his region. they're a really interesting team to me. They've played, as Bill mentioned, teams that finished strong. They played really well. Jace Richardson has emerged as a superstar, I would say, in the later weeks of the season. What do you think about their draw, Jeff, and their potential to do some damage in the Old South?
I mean, especially with the Keyshawn Gilbert injury, I think Michigan State's road to the Elite Eight, at least, is pretty clean for them. This is one of Izzo's best coaching jobs. A year ago at this time, it's, is he going to retire soon? Can he adapt to this new age of college sports? Then he goes out and wins the Big Ten. And he's doing it in a unique way. He's playing 10 guys. I mean, they're as deep as any team in the country. They're big. They can shoot, like you mentioned. It took him a while to put Jace Richardson into the starting lineup. And that was kind of a critique for most of the season, saying he's keeping his best player, not giving him more than 18 minutes. And then he puts him in the lineup and he's a lottery pick. They finished incredibly strong. They lost to Indiana at home in mid-February, and it looked like their grip on the Big Ten was done. And then they rattled off Illinois, Purdue, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin, 3 of them on the road in back-to-back games, just to basically clinch the Big Ten. So they're playing it. They play excellent defense. They're deep. They're old. They obviously have a battle-tested coach in Izzo, and I think their Elite Eight path is pretty clear, especially with the Gilbert injury.
Bill, who did you pick out of this region? We know who Chalk Borzello likes. Who do you like coming out here?
Chalk. I'm not sure what Michigan State's...
the bus.
We don't want your analysis, Chalk Borzello.
No, I just don't know what Michigan State, assuming, obviously brackets never hold up the way we think they are, but I just don't know what they're better than Auburn at exactly. And you can't even say, like, it's been a while since they made a real run in the tournament. I guess Sweet 16 a couple of years ago, but nothing, 2019 would have been the last like serious run. And so you can't even say they have that over Auburn right now. So it's not going to be the worst thing in the world if Michigan State makes it only an Elite Eight run. That's still a really fun year, especially for a team that it kind of just seemed like a top 40-ish kind of team at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I struggle to go with anybody other than Auburn out of this region.
That is very fair. Let's review Auburn's recent NCAA tournament history. 2022, lost in second round. 2023, lost in second round. 2024, lost in first round. Does that scare you, Chalk Borzello?
That doesn't scare me. What does scare me a little bit is their wild card is Chad Baker-Mazara. He's probably their second most important player besides Janai Broome, but he was ejected from last year's tournament loss to Yale. He has had other incidents where he gets technical fouls or gets ejected. He needs to be on the floor for them to win, especially against the Michigan State. As they get deeper in the tournament, he needs to be on the floor. They're a completely different team if he's not out there, if he's not at his best. And it's a legitimate concern whether he, in a high pressure, high stress environment, he's going to need to keep his cool. He's going to need to stay out of foul trouble, need to stay on the floor. That's kind of the only thing that worries me about them. They did lose 3 out of 4 to end the season. It's a testament to how good their resume was. That didn't even matter. They had still by far the best overall resume. And it kind of does remind me a little bit of the second Florida national championship team under Billy Donovan, the team that lost. I believe it was 3 out of 4, 3 in a row to end the regular season, kind of refocused and then steamrolled their way to another title. That could happen with Auburn. They were by far the best team in the country, with the best offense in the country, a historically good offense for, the first 90% of the season. So I'm hoping that this week off kind of allows them to refocus, get back to their best, because their best is still as good as anyone in the country.
Chad Baker-Mazara, to me, the most fascinating player in the tournament, right? There's an old Mike Brayism, like he can heat up the barn or burn it down. And I think Chad Baker-Mazara fits in that. And like if Ken Pom had a volatility index, I think Chad Baker-Mazara would be very high on his quants.
I'm really curious about the SEC in general. I mean, 14 in, I'd have had 13 in personally, but either way. But just as a whole,
horns down, Bill. Are you horns down?
I'm not. You're not going to get me to do it. I'm wearing the wrong color for that.
I was just going to say
that was very unintentional.
Yeah.
But just in general, this historically great conference, that basically means you had a bunch of teams that were really, really good in November and December. And the teams that were really good in November and December aren't always the ones that are best now. And so, losing 3 out of 4, maybe if they bow out early in the tournament, it becomes kind of they ran out of steam, peaked too early kind of situation. But now I'm As much as I was talking about teams that just win throughout 2025, they didn't finish strong. But I'm just gonna trust. Otherwise, you're gonna overthink massively. But I'm gonna trust them.
Yeah. So memory serves me here, and I'm doing some light Googling that the Big East that set the record in 2011 by sending 11 teams to the tournament bombed in the NCAA.
Yeah, didn't do great. Big Ten, at their best. So it is kind of interesting. Best conference doesn't necessarily mean you're the best conference at this exact moment. We'll see how that plays out.
There's always the theory that once you get out of conference play, the teams that were struggling a little bit will, revert to what they were doing in November, December, like you mentioned. That doesn't always work out. It's a lot of these SEC teams that got in, and I don't argue with any of their inclusions. They did lose a lot of games in the last 2 months. Something 11, 12 conference losses, 13 if you count the conference tournament. That's a lot of losses. These teams are not exactly playing their best right now.
So, Bill, this is an interesting sort of stat question, something that you can maybe numerically quantify. We've never seen this, right? So when people are going to be looking at their brackets, they're going to see 14 SEC teams. Like I was just in Nashville.
Everywhere.
You get very biased by what you see in person and live, right? Jeff, you're going to overthink Big East teams because you were at the Garden all week. I'm going to do the same. I did it for years when I covered the Big East tournament. Like, for example, Ole Miss, like you see them in person, they're okay, right? Like, but I look at their matchups and I'm like, well, it's hard to knock them out. How convicted should people be in the SEC? How much is too much? And just give us a general fill out the bracket guideline for the SEC.
Well, I mean, it probably still means something that 4 of the top 6 teams in Ken Palmer SEC. Like we can debate. I certainly can see pretty up close and personal that Missouri stopped playing defense about 3 weeks ago, and Ole Miss. They are kind of. Defensively, they're really strong. I don't necessarily trust what they bring offensively. Teams like that, the Mississippi States and Georgias and Ole Misses, I'm really, really curious how, what they bring to the table here, because obviously they got a ton of chances at top teams, looked good sometimes, and very much not at other times. But those top 4, in whatever order we want to talk about, Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama, I mean, they are as proven as just about anybody in the country. So I think they probably have earned a certain amount of benefit of the doubt. Everybody else, if we want to start, doubting, I think there's reason for it.
All right. As I scroll through the South, do you feel like we've shortchanged anyone conversationally? I picked Michigan State, by the way, to come out of there. I was very intentional about not picking all the chalk because the last thing I think people wanted to listen to a podcast is all the best teams winning. So we're going to try to mix it up a little bit. I probably take enough jabs at my friend Jeff Borzello. Anything else about the South that stands out to you?
I will say I was not joking about Carolina beating Ole Miss.
Really?
I think that as much as we've gotten tired of them and they should not have been in the tournament, they're still an incredibly talented team, especially on the perimeter. When they go toe to toe with Ole Miss in the second round, they're going to be more talented than Ole Miss. Now, again, you could say that about 90% of the teams they face this year, and they haven't really beaten anybody good. But I just don't think they're going to be overmatched by an Ole Miss. I think they can score with Ole Miss, and I just think end of the game, the team that has a guy like R.J. Davis who can get his own shot, Ian Jackson can get his own shot. I just like those guys to make a play at the end of the game, and I don't want to go all chalk throughout my entire bracket. I got to take some double-digit seeds somewhere, and so I'm going to go with Carolina to the second round.
I'm gonna go with the other 11 seed. I love that San Diego State's a team that is just good at what it's good at. They're going to block shots. They're just going to make it really hard to shoot the ball. They might not make any shots themselves, but they're just going to make it really, really hard to score on them. And that makes them one of those teams that could either just meekly bow out very quickly or just frustrate the heck out of 2 or 3 teams. I think. Basically, I'm just trying to set up the all San Diego Elite 8 matchup is what I'm doing. And I think they could absolutely play a role in that.
It's a great basketball town. You guys ever been to a game, an Aztec game?
No.
VA House? No.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's on my list. Yeah.
They do the I believe that we will win chant, and it's like underground. It's a really interesting arena. You go down. I was there early Dutcher years, I think, when they got hot. There was like an NCAA convention in San Diego. I went over to a couple games. Fun venue to watch games in. All right. Well, this is the South Friends. Pick the opposite of everything we said, and you'll win your bracket. And of course, please download the podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcasts, or better yet, subscribe so you never miss a single episode.